All right, so DISA STIGs Part 2, the Linux module works. So rather than directing people to watch Part 1, we're just going to do a very quick review of grabbing all the materials again, especially since there's been some updates. So you can go and search for DISA SCAP SEC tools, and it'll bring you right over to this page. And we're going to dig into some of this. But for SCAP tools, in Part 1 I showed how you had to have a CAC login, but now it's available to the public. So that's really awesome. So we're going to go over and download SCC 5.4.2 for Windows, or, download for your OS of choice. You can run it from various Linux distributions. So we're going to download this. We're also going to skip Unlocker. I know in Part 1 I wanted to make a Part 2 on using Unlocker, but they've put in their documentation that they're going to stop supporting this methodology using Unlocker in the very near future. And in my opinion, already for the last few versions, it hasn't been working. So we'll just skip that. And then the very big news is the SEC 5.4.2 Unix remote scanning plugin is working. So we're going to download that and show you how to install it and use it. And typically you have the latest benchmarks or STIGs included in your SEC tool download, but let's go download the latest just to be safe anyways. And also it's just a good practice and to show you how to load the latest stuff as well. So let's hunt that down. So here's the benchmark. And remember in Part 1, we showed the difference of the STIGs and the benchmark. The benchmark is what's automated, using the SCAP protocol. But we also want the STIGs as well. So we're going to go over to, I think, a library. And again, see how it says SCAP content. So it's making it really clear to you that that's just SCAP, which is the automation protocol for scanning. But let's find the STIGs, which is all the settings that should be set. And again, in Part 1 showed you this size is going to be the same with what we had just downloaded. And you can see how much larger the STIG is. I mean, granted, it's because there's some other documents mixed in there, but this is the comprehensive listing of all the settings that should be done, including the manual checks, which the automation protocol can't do for you. There's obviously some gray zone there. A really good example is, how SCAP will kind of lag behind the STIGs. So there was a period of time where the STIGs wanted you to check various like BitLocker settings, and those were all manual checks, and then SCAP kind of caught up and now it's been automated. But there's some checks that are just kind of inherently manual that won't be automated by DISA, and so you want this you want the STIGs as well. And in the last video we had downloaded STIG viewer, so we're going to go grab that really quickly as well. And we're just going to grab that over at STIG tools and viewing guides. And there's a nice light version, and depending on your environment, like how difficult it might be to like get authorized to install various types of executables and MSIs. You have a STIG viewer that works if you already have Java runtime installed, and then you have a STIG viewer that's a standalone version, and we're just going to stick to the standalone version. All right, let's take what we downloaded, and just real quick, I also had grabbed RHEL 8's benchmark, but you're going to see in the future here that the module has all that for us. Let's see here. Let's just put it in documents, DISA stuff. And we're going to extract all of these, and let's install SEC first, and there's going to be another extraction required here. All right, so it's done extracting. And what's found in here is, here's a little plug for maybe a part 3 or 4, is CSCC and CSCC remote. You can operate the scat checker, the SCC tool, from PowerShell, and specify a lot of arguments, like point it to certain an options XML file that you specified that specifies what type of log outputs to have. So there's like a lot of cool automation you can do versus just having to use the SCC tool itself, the GUI itself. You can start to build this into things like having Splunk automate kicking scans off. So we're just going to go back upstream though, and we're going to install this. And when we install it, also a key thing that we want to do here is make sure that we install the service, and that makes the features inside the GUI that you're going to see here install SCC as a service, and that's going to enable some parts of the menu inside the SCC GUI to set up things like allowing scheduled scans from Task Manager. All right, so we've got the shortcut, and now let's go ahead and run it. And in part 1, I showed you how to load new benchmarks and whatnot. So we're gonna skip that part, and we're gonna skip scanning Windows 10 because that's all in part 1. And we're gonna get to the meat and potatoes of this part 2 video, which is installing the Unix module and operating it against an unwilling Red Hat machine here. All right, so I'll finish loading up. One of the things I like to do is I'm just going to get rid of the stuff that we're not going to use here. Keep it kind of clean. Let's keep those. Now it's a little more cleaned up. And just real quickly, you would go to install and select content in where we've downloaded the additional benchmarks if you wanted to update your benchmarks. So you can see your versions and dates here. So now to the good part. So now Linux is a thing. So this option has been in the dropdown for quite some time, but it wasn't quite working yet. And now we can do a Unix SSH remote scan. So we're going to select that, and we're going to install the Unix remote scan plugin that we downloaded earlier. And it's going to take a little while to update the content, and we'll just let that cycle through. And as you can see, it's quite comprehensive what it supports. We have even Mac OS X here, Raspbian, RHEL 6 through 7 to 8, and even Spark architecture, Solaris. So yeah, pretty neat, even Spark. So it supports a lot of stuff, and we're going to use RHEL 8. And now this is where it's going to get a little interesting is, you're not just going to start the scan. We obviously need to input some credentials here. And to do that, I'm going to get things kicked off by edit, select Unix hosts. And it's going to give us this master password prompt, which is basically like exactly what it says. I mean, this is built with an environment in mind where you're going to have multiple Unix hosts or clients, and maybe different credentials need to be saved. The master vault for saving all these other credentials. So this pops up, and now not only can we add hosts, but we could add credentials. And so what we're going to do here is on this rel 8 box, I do have a user token tech here. And this is where it's going to get a little interesting. And I took this from Tenable Experience. I kind of knew going into this what to do here, thankfully. So we're going to use token tech and not root. And we're going to type in both our SSH, and it's also going to be our sudo password. Obviously, yeah, if you use keys, it's giving you that option. I haven't validated or tested that yet, but it's nice to see that that option's planned out there. And also, if using the SU option. So this is big because what happens is if we were to just input root's information in here and use root and not input this, once your box is STIGged, it's going to break your ability to scan because root is not allowed to SSH in if you're fully STIGged. So we're going to want to use an account that has sudoers, and it's going to leverage basically kind of like this privilege escalation type thing where it will SSH in as token tech and also super user to then have the creds to successfully scan. And now to make sure that's going to even work, you'll see here that I'm currently not in the sudoers. So we're going to fix that really quick. All right, with that done, token tech has sudo. We made sure we put a token tech username credentials saved here. Now let's add the new host. It's going to be our IP here. It's going to be the .15.129 on this network. So standard port, auto detect, authentication type. So this is the real key part. So SSH as root will work on an unhardened system, but again, we don't want the scan capability breaking after we harden the system. So we're gonna start out SSH as non-root and then sudo with password. And we're going to use that credential that we had just set up. And let's do a test and see how this has not been saved. We want to save the host key and trust it. And we have a success. So let's just do a test again and save and close it out. So that's set up. And now let's close this out. And let's kick off a scan. We have this saved and selected as the host to be scanned with the credentials. So we're going to start the scan using that particular host list. And now it's kicking off. And it's going to be running in the background. And we'll check here. You'll see SCC show up. So scc.bin, and it starts to slam the CPU. I only have 2 cores on this VM, but yeah, you can see that it's doing some work. So we'll let it do its job. I'll put it on pause and come back with the results. And just checking in here, you see that it's just checking in here and it's processing the test, and this count increases over time. we'll check in on the host again. And it's been running for almost 3 minutes and it's still chugging along. So if you're a little bit resource constrained, it's not the fastest scan, but it's not too bad either. While I'm here, so a good example of speeding up scans or not is when you do run a remote scan for Windows, you have a classic mode and WMI option. And when you select the WMI option, it's a lot faster. So classic mode will conduct the scan completely over the wire. For every check, it will hit that machine and run the check remotely, credentialed, and it takes some time doing it that way. And that's classic mode. When you use WMI mode, it's actually sending a package to each machine and runs the scan locally and then sends the results back. And on larger networks, you'll see that that's a much, much faster way than running classic. All right, and there you go. We have a remote reviews completed. It's cleaning up the remote host. So we'll check over on here. And you'll see that it's done running. Close. And to make this go faster, actually, we'll do a little backtrack here in options. There are a number of things that we could have turned off here to make it go faster. So we made a lot of unnecessary files depending on your environment. Like we shouldn't have done the oval scan. And this is maybe for another video, going into the automation part, because this options right here is what I showed earlier as far as this backend where you can run SEC via PowerShell. This options file gets saved here. And so this is where you can specify custom option files when you start to automate things. The changes you make here goes to that file. And you would typically change things like the output options and reduce a lot of the clutter. There's a lot of settings in here to change to kind of tune up for your environment needs. But yeah, we're going to go back and view these results. And you'll see here that this is the scan. And we have a HTML report. And this is a vanilla system, not hardened whatsoever. So yeah, you've got this really low score. Here's some of the passes, I guess, to expect from a vanilla install. And then lots and lots of fail. And it's going to be IT department on how to harden your Unix systems. DISA has GPOs for Windows boxes to get you, really deep into compliance, really far in there. But with Unix, yeah, it's going to be a little more subject matter expert level as far as finding a way to harden that. And sorry for that abrupt shutting down. So let's just get her going again. So next, we're going to install that viewing tool. So STIG viewer. You also had a .msi that could be downloaded. Okay, so already it's loaded here with the STIG for Windows 10. Let's see here. Let's get our version numbers squared away here. So let's now import rel 8. And then let's remember, this is the benchmark. So this is only the automated checks. And we actually want the STIG, which is more comprehensive for our check file. So we're going to download the Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 STIG. That's going to be over in download. So let's load that up. Let's import it. And let's load it up. And we'll compare against that. And now let's import the XCCDF results. So we're going to create a checklist so that now we can import XCCDF results. And by default, it's going to be in the user path. I'm logged in as SCC sessions, and it's going to be the XCCDF file. And again, we can clean this up by deselecting some of those options shown earlier, but now you can see, so basically like the HTML I showed earlier, but now we have it in STIG viewer, and this is where you can organize it much better, you know, by status. And you can also comment how things are finding or not a finding, organize it by cat, you know, by severities. And as things get fixed, you can input, you know, how it's no longer a finding, put comments that, you know, system administrator, you know, conducted the fix and now the value's changed and it's now, you know, within compliance, or not a finding because for some reason it's not applicable to the environment, or you have something else that mitigates the vulnerability altogether. So thanks for checking out part 2. I hope this was informative. At the very least, it's good to know that the Linux plugin is working. And also, I hope that was a useful tip as far as using a user account that's in the sudoers and using that methodology of authentication I showed you. Because again, once you start actually hardening the system, be it that you're using like a gold copy or Ansible playbook or what have you, once you have a hardened Nix system, using just the plain root SSH authentication method is not going to work for you because there is a STIG to prevent that. In fact, let's look for that STIG right now of what I'm talking about. That would break scans if you just leverage root. So we'll just make a filter SSH and see what populates here. And it's going to be 230.296. So right here, rel 8 must not permit direct logins to the root account using remote access via SSH. So yeah, that's currently an open finding right now because again, this is a totally vanilla system. But as you see, once you harden the system, you would break your scanning capability if you had just leveraged root as the credential system. So use that escalation methodology that they provide. And here's also a good example of not reviewed or NRs. So here's not a finding. It was an automated scan to find that this is set correctly. And let's look at this not review. What this is telling me is, well, you need a DoD notice and consent banner before logging in. But being an NR is telling me that their automation plugin is not looking for this file and establishing that it's correct. Maybe, you know, there would be a predetermined path and maybe a hash to make sure that the file's in the right place, and also check the configurations for it to be a banner. In this case, it's a manual check, and that's the key point of loading the STIGs into STIG viewer, to have all the automated checks, but also the manual checks all in one place. And then you import your SCAP results from your SEC tool, which is just the results from the automated portion of the scan. And then this puts it all together comprehensively. And just to prove that real quick, so you see I've uploaded the STIG and then the scan results. And so now we can see scan results plus the not reviews, the manuals. But let's do this over. Let's not use the STIG. Let's use the benchmark and create a checklist from the benchmark. And then import the XCCDF results files that we had just done. So you can see here. And now you're going to see there's only pass and fail. There's no not reviewed, because we're just comparing the automated list against the automated results. And in future videos, I can go over how using Tenable, if I could get that license, how to use Tenable to automate a lot of these checks as well, because Tenable has a lot more enumeration tools and plugins at its to check a lot of these things in an automated fashion, and even go further with their custom.auto files and automate things like these not reviewed, and also ingesting these XCCDF files into Splunk. I'm thinking about doing a few videos there of how you would ingest this data into Splunk and start making some really, basic but nice searches against this information there, and then even build out a dashboard and start give yourself the capability of comparing older scans to newer scans all in one convenient place. All right, thanks. Bye.